For Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024, we're coming to you from the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic, historic Wall Center at downtown Vancouver. Vancouver turned game night into a game weekend. Book your stay at the Wall Center and enjoy an exclusive S&P rate. Yeah, the S&P rate's back. Call 604-331-1000. Mention Sekeres Price. Some blackout dates supply based on availability. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson hitting switches and conducting things. We got a big show coming up for you as we make the turn from Labor Day, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
And into September. Now, here's the thing. Get this out of the way off the top. Every year back in our radio days and in the last few years here in the digital space, Blake and I have been like, Labor Day come and gone, kids back to school, routines, all that.
Let's go hockey
season. And what the numbers, the analytics have clearly shown to us over the last few years is
you ain't ready.
You're not fully ready for hockey season the week of Labor Day. Hey, kids going to new schools, new activities. I need the week to get my routines sorted. So we'll be two shows this week. I see our friends D&D have made the same call here as well, that they're not back this week. And we'll be back at it with 5 shows weekly, daily shows, starting up on Monday. So thank you for your understanding there. Let's get to our poll question. And look, we are going to start talking about the hockey season. Looking forward to the Vancouver Canucks 24-25, and of course, everything that's around them, not to mention this new, renewed, reignited rivalry with the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers signed Leon Draisaitl today, or extend Leon Draisaitl. More on that in a moment. Our poll question, are the Oilers the team to beat in the West? Yes or no? You can vote at the Sekeres Price X and YouTube channels. What says you?
They are. Yeah, they're the ones that represented the Western Conference last year. I was going to say yesterday. Feels like it. Last year, they have juggernaut players in McDavid and Draisaitl, and have now started to finally support those two players with a better supporting cast. So it's them until somebody else rears their head. Colorado, we know theoretically has players, but that was not a dominant Colorado team for all season long. Vegas, we know, has had the pedigree of that in the last few years, but they didn't really show that. You kept on waiting for them to kick it into high gear, and it never happened for them. So, and Dallas is an up-and-comer. Dallas is sort of like another Vancouver in that you're not sure how good they're going to be at any given moment, but you don't want to consider them. So it's there are several candidates there, but until Colorado and Vegas say that they are back to being what we thought they would be, it's Edmonton.
I hate to agree with you so holistically because I look for all sorts of reasons not to vote Edmonton Oilers on this poll question. And I'll start it off by saying, agree with him. When you're the defending Western Conference champ, you made it to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. You have 2 of the, 3 or 5, if you're being, if you want to get finicky about it, best skaters in the world. Yeah, it's hard for me to cast a vote elsewhere. I looked at other teams. For example, I think Vegas is bouncing back in a strong way here this year. I know there will be some who look at it and say, oh, they lost Jonathan Marchessault, so he was such a heart and soul and beloved player. Great, and he's still productive. Great, all of that. They may be getting out of that player at just the right time, given his age and stature. I look at that Vegas defense, and 1 through 6, I think if it's not the best in the NHL, it is right there. I think they're still going to get good goaltending. Samsonov has been added there to Aiden Hill. Maybe not get the same number of goals. You do wonder about the Vegas Golden Knights' health. That's seemingly been a problem. I don't think they're going to be monkeying around with LTIR to the same extent that they did last year. I think that's a bit of a lesson learned. You don't want to so hurt your regular season position by going that route. So I see a 3-team derby in the Pacific. Look, we've talked long about the Vancouver Canucks. Love their depth, particularly up front. Some questions about their defense. I'm not sure the defense is, in fact, their defense is not as good as it was last year, at least not unless Forbert or Desharnais
Our transcendence.
can come in and take significant steps forward to get to that Zadorov level. Needless to say, some questions about the health status of the goalies, at least early in the season. And of course, as we've also talked about, the Vancouver Canucks top 7 scorers were perfectly healthy last year. And the shooting percentage was ridiculously high in the first half. So the Canucks have some things to overcome. Look, I don't think the Oilers are a fully formed team here.
They're not perfect. No one's saying they're perfect.
I mean, that third defense pair is wretched, if you ask me, unless Emberson is a real player. And, of course, the goaltending, we'll see if Stuart Skinner can maintain through the regular season this year because, I know Jack Campbell took a lot of the heat, but Skinner was pretty awful in the early going last year, too. Not to mention was benched in the playoff series against the Vancouver.
Being the number one guy
Canucks.
for 82 games tonight, playing 82 games, but for the duration of an 82-game season and through the playoffs is a different toll. And right now we need to see how Stuart Skinner does with all that. Yeah. He's a goaltender. He's past prospect now at 25. He's a good goaltending possibility there. But I'm not convinced. I'm still not convinced.
So I looked at Vegas. I looked at Colorado as the next closest Stanley Cup winner, right? A couple of years ago. And look, you absolutely adore that Colorado top 4. Taves, Makar, Girard, and Manson. Goaltending? Are you a Georgiev fan? Will the youngster Ananin be a factor? And I still don't love them down the middle, Blake. Okay, Middlestad. I guess you could form a lineup there in Colorado where you're playing Middlestad as your 2C and Ross Colton as your 3C. That maybe buffers you a little bit down the middle. But then you look at the wingers, and I think they could be a little bit thin there as well. I loved Dallas last year. They were my pick to win it all. I'm not sure Dallas is as good on paper this year as Dallas has been in previous years, but it's still a ridiculously talented top 9 forward group.
They had a lot go. They're kind of like the Canucks. They had a lot go right for them last year.
Ridiculously a good top 9 forward group. I still like the defense. I'm not sure I love the defense. The goaltending should be solid with Ottinger and DeSmith, but I couldn't find a reason to put Dallas ahead of Edmonton when we're talking about teams to beat, in part because, of course, they lost the Western Conference Final.
Remind me,
to the Oilers.
Where are we with Gabriel Landeskog?
Well, I suspect I thought he was coming back this year, or was going to hope to put everything in.
I think that was the intention. So.
Well, there was talk about him coming back last year. So he's out 12 weeks after another knee surgery. Oh, sorry. No, that's a
wrong year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
could return near start of season, according to their head coach, Jared Benner. So, yeah, I think you're seeing Landeskog play this year, but look, he's missed a lot of time now.
Yeah.
And that's an older player on a very serious injury. So I'm not sure how many goals you can count on Landeskog for. And then look, the rest of the Western Conference, I think Nashville's improved. Not sure. I don't love the contracts they signed with older players and Stamkos and Marchessault, but they could get some short-term benefit here before the pain sets in.
Right.
Not to mention, we talked about how Nashville has those 3 first-round picks in this upcoming draft. Not to mention potentially $4 million in cap savings if Philadelphia is able to successfully terminate the contract of Port Moody's Ryan Johansson. So I think Nashville could be a factor there, but yeah, couldn't find a reason to pick anyone other than the Edmonton Oilers. It brings us to our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, and Foolish Winery. Leon Draisaitl is now the highest paid player in the National Hockey League, or will be next season when his lucrative extension kicks in. It's a total $112 million over 8 years with a full no-move clause. Starting next season, Draisaitl will be earning $14 million a year, and that is the highest total in the National Hockey League. It's not the highest total value deal. Ovechkin signed a $124 million contract, but $14 million per year sets a new bar.
And it will be the highest salary for 1 year until his teammate has his extension kick in. McDavid will sign that extension, they hope, next year in the same circumstances as Draisaitl, with a year remaining when that window opens up, and with a forecasted $4 to $5 million bump again next year on the salary cap, which will equate to a $10 million bump thereabouts over the course of 2 seasons. What does that do to a salary cap structure in the National Hockey League? What is the number, Matthew Sekeres? What is your projected number, AAV, for Connor McDavid now that we have this information under our belts?
14.1 million.
No, really? Is that, you're going prices right on this?
Well, I'm going prices right because I think Connor will understand, particularly if they don't win the cup this year, that the more he takes, the weaker the Edmonton Oilers will be. And once you start getting, and as you outlined, the salary cap has gone up, but once you start getting to this level of salary per player, rounding out a team proves very difficult, even with salary cap jumps of $3 to $5 million. But I mean, that's not covering the amount of the raises that these guys are getting, let alone being able to have some left in the kitty to sign other players. So I think it will be important for him to be the highest paid Edmonton Oiler. I think his agent will make that clear. I think it'll be important for him to be the highest paid player in the NHL. We'll see if someone exceeds 14 million by next summer, but presuming not, then I think slightly more than Draisaitl, just so you're the number one paid guy on the team and being able to leave as much money for your new general manager, Stan Bowman, to round out the roster.
So Nathan McKinnon, for instance, makes 14.3% of the Colorado Avalanche salary, just below that for Elias Pettersson.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it. What is the percentage of the cap for Draisaitl? Oh, because we don't know the cap yet.
We don't know the cap yet, so we can't project it. But I'm just saying, you know, if we're going to project that, we're not going to quite be at 100 million for Connor McDavid. So even at 14.1 million, which is your guess, you know, if we're going to say that the salary cap is probably 96 million, 97 million, somewhere in there, it'll be over 14.2% for Connor McDavid at that number. The question is, you know, is that sort of the superstar number for Austin Matthews this year? He's at 15.1%. So I'm going to say that Connor McDavid makes $15.5 million, $15.5 million, which will put him in the 16% sort of the salary cap, I would project. And that's about right. If Matthews is 15%, Connor McDavid at 16%.
I just look at it in terms of how some of these quarterbacks, how some of these other absolute superstars, Michael Jordan once upon a time, have dealt with it, right? That when you're at that level, what's the Saravelli line? All it changes is the size of the boat you can buy.
Oh, for sure. Now, I do want to bring it around to the Canucks here. In this regard,
I do too.
Because you know, salary cap wise, the Canucks could get saved here with these bigger jumps, these medium jumps, and everybody projected the OEL pain here. But if salary cap jumps are going to take away some of the OEL pain, the Canucks get away with it a little bit more. And, you know, past the next jump, Matt, I mean, they've got very little business left to do of the extravagant kind, because Brock Besser is going to be expensive, but not this kind of expensive.
No.
Thatcher Demko is going to be expensive theoretically, but goalies now
That is totally up in the air right now.
Yeah,
but I hear what you're saying.
Totally up in the air
Okay.
because of injury and how much you want to
on the
invest.
theory that Demko comes back, replicates his best in a finalist year, and gives you the confidence that he will be a healthy boy from game 1 through your final playoff game. If that scenario plays out, then you're looking at a ton of money for Thatcher Demko.
But I'll still believe $10 million goalies when I see them.
Well, and the other thing too, Blake, I mean, as it stands right now, and look, even if Demko does have another marvelous season, the Canucks are well within their right to say, no, Thatcher, we're going to play it out and see how you finish your contract before talking extension. I mean, that, it's a dangerous game. We've all talked about that. You get to close to free agency. Does the player want to see what else is out there? But the Canucks would well be within their rights, given the player's injury history, to play it that way.
If he's under 40 games this year, under 45 games, I think you have to.
For sure.
You have to.
Oh, of course. No doubt.
But big picture, it's Quinn Hughes and only Quinn Hughes in 3 years' time that is of chief concern for the Vancouver Canucks, and that's a good thing to have.
I mean, you'll see what Höglander does, but again, he's not.
No, but I mean,
you're talking about bank breaking guys.
Yeah,
okay.
who's breaking your bank? You only have to worry about Quinn Hughes right now.
Well,
unless Jonathan Lekramaki comes in the next 3 years, is scoring 35 goals.
You only have to worry about Quinn Hughes, but partner, I hope you haven't forgotten, because you were so strong on this point when it was going down and through all of last season. They do have the OEL dead money.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying. That these jumps though are negating them.
So OEL is going to cost them $2.3 million this year. That is up from last year. He's going to cost them $4.76 million next season and the year thereafter. And you're right.
So if it's a $4.5 million jump, you don't even notice the difference.
Yeah.
And you're fully invested in your difference-making players. And that's my point, is that you get to write that off, and you're kind of set still for the following year. Mm-hmm. Now you have to consider Ilya Mikheyev the next 2 years. So next year's the big one, not this coming year, the one after. It's going to be $5.5 million
for Mikheyev
and OEL.
Yeah. And of course, this year you're still stick handling Pullman.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But no, you're quite right.
The cap could save the Canucks, and the Canucks have done all their business early. That if you can still fashion a winner here in the middle years of the JT Miller contract, they could come away looking pretty good here.
Besser and Höglander and RFA still with Arbrights next year for the Canucks. Now, I was going to take a look at this Draisaitl extension in a different light through the Canucks prism. And that is, are the Oilers not just the team to beat this season, but for many years thereafter? Because there was a school of thought, and I was a big subscriber here, and I will be mayor of Wrongville on it and account for errors and omissions later in the program. But there was a school of thought that, does Leon Draisaitl, a German, want to spend the rest of his playing years in Edmonton, Alberta, particularly if it's not delivering cups, or particularly if it does deliver a cup and he can say mission accomplished? Because I was, and said it here on the show, I thought, you wait this one out, Leon. You see how next year goes with the goaltending, with the defense. If Stan Bowman can fashion a championship club around your great core of offensive players, you get another year where the cap goes up, right? Which potentially could further enrich you. And you create a bidding war, the likes of which we have not seen much in the National Hockey League. A player of that stature getting to unrestricted free agency. And I did believe some of the smoke coming out of California that with their German ownership, they would move heaven and earth to sign a German superstar, that a team that could count Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith, the two terrific young centermen, to be able to, and now Askarov, the goaltender, to be able to add a player of Draisaitl stature, completely fast forwards your program. Not to mention what we have heard from NHLers and ex-NHLers for the entirety, the entire time we've been doing this show, Blake, and that is NHL players absolutely love living in San Jose. It is one of the most desirable markets.
So you think he forces his way out?
I was buying that smoke. And look, not limited to San Jose, right? Like New York City's a compelling place to play. Florida, particularly with the tax laws, a compelling place to play. LA. So I was surmising that I thought a lot of the most desirable places in the National Hockey League, markets, cities, teams, would be all over Draisaitl next year in free agency. I think that is a lot less likely now with the extension, Blake. It's still, I mean, he still could force a trade at some point here. He's got a full no move clause
every year.
So he would be able to control to some degree. And we talked about this with Elias Pettersson and JT Miller and other contracts that were coming up for the Canucks. If you give them the full no move, then effectively you allow them to pay the path to their next destination, right? We saw this with Ryan Kessler, who only wanted to go to certain markets. So, yeah, I could see that happening, but I will acknowledge this makes it a lot less likely.
I wonder if they ever get to the point. I wonder if they could fashion this either in a CBA or even outside of the CBA. If you waive your no move clause yourself, if you instigate a waiving of your no move,
do you lose it for the remainder of the deal?
And do you give up the right to dictate teams? Like do you give up?
How you do that?
What did you say? In the minute you waive the no move clause, you're available. You lose all trade protection.
Yeah, well,
but you said
that is not the no move clause that players and agents have negotiated in. So that's a next CBA matter. And even with the next CBA, I wonder if you would have to grandfather that in.
But the whole point is, if you want a no move clause, then it's a no move clause. If you want to waive it, then it's waived. Like it's a black and white thing. It's either on or off. You can't throttle it, is what is my point. Because teams are building their team with the assumption of a no move clause for you. If you all of a sudden want to take that away, well, that's not what was negotiated. That's my point.
Yeah. I think teams, though, are eyes wide open here. They know full well that giving a guy a full no move clause basically gives a guy the right to determine his trade destination.
Mm-hmm.
So it is what it is for now. I hate that phrase, but that's what we're looking at, and that's what I'll.
But I
go forward with.
But I don't even know how that's.
I just
that's not written anywhere.
So, but also think of it this way, Blake. So, to execute what you've just talked about, that would be a significant give that the owners are giving the players, and that would give them ammunition, the players, to ask for something in return in this next CBA. Not typically how Gary operates. Not typically how the greedy 32, the board, operates. So, because again, that's a hockey ops problem. That's not an owner's bottom line problem. So I would suspect that much like we've seen with other CBAs, hey, this new deal has created this mess for the GMs. COVID, right? The flat cap. Well,
figure it
out, guys. That's what I'm paying you to do.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to secure my bottom line first and foremost. Now you can go about building me a championship winner. What are our friends at Yellow Dog and Neighborhood up to? Looking forward to getting there next weekend for Youngstars. Going to talk some prospects here in a moment.
Indeed. They want to tell you that the mix packs are still available. The Dog Park mix pack. Dog Park 8 tall can mix pack consists of 4 light and refreshing beers, the classic Retriever Golden Ale, the Rollover Cerveza Negra, and 2 new brews exclusive to the mix pack, the Rascal Japanese Lager and the Pack Leader Pilsner. Go pick it up right now at your nearest retailer.
Well, we are not far from people in Canucks sweaters hitting ice. And I mean the prospects, the young stars.
In refereed,
in
competitive matches.
Yes, exactly.
Pseudo-competitive.
Sanctioned matches.
Yes.
There will be stats kept. There will be officials on the ice. There will be a expectant ticket buying audience.
And there would, you'd think, be a ballyhooed prospect in Jonathan Lacramaki.
Well, so here's the thing. I want to talk 3 prospect notes here. First, Lacramaki, who we'll see at Young Stars.
And tickets go on sale tomorrow, by the way.
Mhm.
If you're planning on going up. That's for training camp.
Sorry. And if you haven't seen the South Okanagan Event Center, it is truly one of the jewel arenas in our province. It's an absolutely spectacular place. Spend some time at the BC Hockey Hall of Fame looking at all the displays there. And hit up the neighborhood corner because the beer is delicious. Assuming Lacramaki is not immediately NHL ready, right? I don't think anyone has him on this team coming out of training camp. Correct? Opening night lineup.
It would have to be something
that would be
spectacular.
mind-blowing stuff. Mind-blowing stuff.
Because they don't need to. They've improved their forward depth, so they don't need to force it.
So take me through a timeline here. If he had to spend all year in the AHL,
Not the end of the world.
Okay. Would you hope that he's ready at some point past the midpoint of the season?
My hope is that he's semi-productive before Christmas, goes on a bit of a hot streak in January, and they say, let's
call
just
him
see.
up for February, March, just to see what he looks like in a National Hockey League
they
uniform.
get an injury.
And because who knows, maybe you might need his goal scoring in the playoffs.
But you don't gift it. I mean, I think there has to be a reason why he's been called up. There has to be some production to lean on. I don't think if he's got 7 goals in January, I don't think you're doing that. He's ultimately going to be in charge of whether or not he gets called up, I think.
Yeah. Look, best case scenario for me, he goes to the AHL. He has 2 incredible months, and you're looking at a Christmas call-up. Next best scenario is some point in the new year, he's looking good enough that he's tracking towards a call-up. Third best scenario is, the games down the stretch maybe aren't the most important because you're in the playoffs. Maybe it's just for seeding or something like that. Let's have a look-see. And if it's option number 4 and he has to play the whole year in the American Hockey League, hey, adjusting to the North American game when you're sort of a light perimeter scoring winger on the big ice of Europe, that is A-okay. And I know he started playing more inside and getting more inside. I read all the reports from prospect guys, Dave Hall of Canucks Army and Cam Robinson and Steve Ellis and others. But it's a pretty, you almost have to learn how to score again because you're not typically going to be able to score the types of goals that you've been accustomed to on the bigger ice against, let's face it, lesser goaltenders than you'll see in the NHL.
He just turned 20 like 3 weeks ago. Young guy. If you're talking about a 21-year-old rookie next year, that doesn't sound weird. We're not talking about a 25-year-old rookie or 23-year-old rookie. 21-year-old rookies are a thing, particularly, with the NCAA route these days. You're often not getting your player until around then. And you can think of this year in Abbotsford, if this is an entire year in the AHL, this is his sophomore year, junior year in NCAA hockey of sorts, as it pertains to his draft year, it's a sophomore year, but
it would be junior year, right? Because he's had 2 seasons since he was drafted.
Has he had 2?
Yeah,
okay. So it would be
because he had the struggle year right after the Canucks selected him and then bounced back in a major
right
last season.
So you wouldn't bat an eyelash at a guy coming out after his junior year.
Nope.
To become a rookie. So
that's why I say sort of, if I had to handicap it, I would think there might be some activity with him late in the season.
15th overall pick here, folks. If this is your 5th overall pick and he's a 21-year-old rookie, maybe you're a little more disappointed.
I think it's also a different equation if you're looking at a 6'2", 210-pound sort of middle 6 upside winger.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But this is a guy who, I think you'll hear Patrick Alvin say it, Rick Tocchet, Manny Malhotra, others will say it at different points this year. He's got to play in the NHL when he's ready to be a scorer. Like, I'm not sure we're talking about a bang and crash, get him settled in the bottom six type of profile here. I think he's going to have to play with creative players, offensively inclined players, and that may well extend the development here in the American Hockey League. Because I'm just not sure how much he's going to help you in other facets of the game, particularly this year. In fact, I think it would be unfair to ask or expect him to help your hockey club in ways other than what his bread and butter is, what his staple is. And that is being a goal scorer and being an offensively productive player. Now, we map out the forwards here, however you want to map them out. Nils Aman, Phil DiGiuseppe, and maybe Sammy Blais, who is on a PTO, would look to be the next most experienced NHL players, right? Forwards.
Yep.
So one of them will be the 13th forward. We anticipate they'll keep the two extra defensemen, Friedman and Juleson. Who knows? An injury in camp could throw all that out of whack, but presuming they keep 8 defensemen, a 13th forward is probably coming down to Aman, PDG, and Sammy Blais, if he's signed. Look into your prospect crystal ball for me. Aatu Räty, Arshdeep Bains. Do you see a route for either of those two young men to leapfrog the contenders there, Aman, PDG, Blais, in the early going?
They need to be like dominant. Like they need to be excellent. Like I would say Ratu's year last year was meh.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. It was okay. I mean,
you're kinder than I am. Then I thought it was, if you're expecting this player to be a top 6 player eventually, if that's where you think this guy's tracking, I would say that's disappointing. But
he's still off. He was still awfully young, Blake.
He's still young, for sure. He is.
He played most of the year at 20. He just turned 21 last November. So,
but I think he needs to be excellent in order to change how that goes. And not saying that's impossible.
Yep.
But that's what's
in Baines's case,
because he's older, even more so.
Because he's older, doesn't play the middle, and may not have the offensive tools that Räty can. Well, I mean, I don't want to limit him, but Arshdeep Bains to me looks like a guy who's going to score at the AHL level and have to check at the NHL level. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was 55 points in 59 games for Bains last year. It was 52 points in 72 games for Räty last year, but as we mentioned, Räty turned 21 in season. Bains turned 23 in season in January birthday. Do you have any long shot hope for Linus Karlsson, who did see NHL games, for Max Sasson, who they talked about last year and saying how they liked his year and he can play the middle, or for the erstwhile Danila Klimovich?
I don't have much hope for him. I don't have a ton of hope for the other guys either. But, in the context of an NHL season, you do see call-ups. Linus Karlsson played 4 games this past season. Arshdeep Bains played 8 games. Heck, Akita Hirose played 3 games this past season.
At the beginning of the year.
Like, lest you forget. So, you do rely on the depth of your AHL team throughout the course of a year. So I'm not saying those guys aren't going to be seen. You get in injury situations, yeah, they could very well be seen, but whether or not they'll be seen because of absolute need versus absolute want, you want to be called up because of absolute want. They just want to see you because you're playing so well, rather than we have nobody else. Can you come up, please? And that's been more the case of late for the Vancouver Canucks. So, or absolute need because not necessarily we've got nobody else injury wise. We've got nobody else production wise that can do this right now. So let's try you out of some level of desperation. You want them to be forced to give you a look because you are just playing so damn well. And we haven't seen that really here of late. So we'll see if either of those guys or any of those guys can ramp it up.
Yeah. So all of them interesting names to watch at Young Stars, put it that way. Because everyone there, Ratu, Baines, Carlson, Sasan. Well, you think Carlson will play Young Stars?
I don't know if Baines will play. I don't think Baines will play.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see.
Just because he's 23?
Yeah.
I mean, they've had guys 25, 26 in this tournament in years past. Like it is an opportunity to see guys in games. Like this notion that it's somehow an insult to ask an AHL veteran to play youngsters, forget about it.
Well,
you're not a made player. You're not a made NHL player. Whole idea of the minor leagues is develop players. This is another development opportunity.
Further to whether or not they could be there, they just might need the bodies. The other thing is,
we've seen that from the Canucks before too.
They don't have a deep cupboard. They will probably have a bunch of free agent invitees on that team as well, I would suggest. So yeah, they might just say, "Hey, we've got a pretty thin group right now. Arshdeep, you're going."
One of the national broadcast schedules is out. It's the American schedule on TNT. And first of all, I'll give TNT credit. They've done a pretty good job here in their first 2 years on hockey. In fact, I prefer the TNT broadcast to the ESPN broadcast, other than hearing Ferraro on the color. Actually, I like Levy a lot as well, and McDonough as play-by-play guys, but I prefer the TNT studio show. And I got to give it to TNT. Like, they have been pretty broad in terms of who they've put on their network. Remember 2 years ago, the Canucks and Ducks played a late season game on TNT. They were both desperately out of it.
I think the schedule's fine. I think their crew calling games are okay. I can't watch
You can't watch the studio show?
No.
Okay.
Cannot do it.
The Canucks will be on TNT twice this year, February 26th at the Los Angeles Kings and against the Vegas Golden Knights on April 16th. And folks, yes, April 16th is a regular season night.
Wow. So we're talking about a playoffs beginning on the 21st,
It
20th.
is, once again, if you've been missing all summer, you may remember that the Stanley Cup playoffs went until past summer into mid-June, 24th of June. And then we did a quick turnaround where all of a sudden we were doing drafts before the Stanley Cup parade. If you'll recall. Draft was Friday, Saturday. Was it Friday, Saturday, or Thursday, Friday, whatever it was. Parade was on a weekend in Florida. So it is once again another year. And of course, this year we're making time for this Four Nations tournament as opposed to an all-star game. Not to mention, of course, we are going back to Olympic participation. More on that in a moment. Here's the thing, Blake. April 16th. It's not even the final day of the NHL regular.
It's not?
It's the penultimate day.
I was going to say maybe you could start the playoffs on the 19th.
There are games going, regular season games, brother, on Thursday, April 17th.
Okay, so did this playoffs begin on a Sunday? On Sunday the 20th? I guess they probably will have to.
Yeah.
That's a weird night to start your playoffs.
Yeah. So April 16th is the penultimate day of the NHL regular season this year, believe it or not. And the Vancouver Canucks and Vegas Golden Knights will contest their game on TNT for the American broadcast audience. And here's the thing, like, that game may have some weight. Like, I could easily see that being for second place in the Pacific or for seeding in the Stanley Cup playoffs, right?
Yeah, potentially.
And that is the last Canucks game of the regular season, April 16th. Speaking of the Olympics, Latvia, Denmark, Slovakia advanced. Latvia in Riga in front of the adoring home public, which included Artur Shilovs in the stands or in the box rooting on his teammates. We talked about these three last chance qualifiers. This was the perfect result. This is the three we wanted. We wanted Latvia, of course, a great ice hockey playing, a great ice hockey tradition and culture there. The fans absolutely adore it. We wanted Slovakia, of course. Once upon a time, you're old enough to remember the unified Czechoslovak team was pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So nice to see Slovakian hockey continue to make strides after the Velvet Revolution and the 30 years of hardship it's caused there. And Denmark as well, because of the NHL players they can put out there on the ice, including quality goaltending and some skaters. So those are your final three participants in the men's Olympic ice hockey tournament in Milano Cortina, Italy, winter of 2026. The tributes and the memories continue to flood in for the Gaudreau brothers, Johnny and Matthew, who, as you know, were hit and killed by a suspected drunk driver while riding their bikes in New Jersey last Thursday, the eve of their sister's wedding. When we read the statement Friday, Blake, from their uncle, he called both of them fathers. And I looked at that twice because I did not see Matthew, the younger brother, having a child.
But it's coming, yes.
As we've learned, if this story can get any sadder, his wife is pregnant. They are expecting a child. A few things I want to hit on here. Number one, Ken Campbell in the Hockey News. Jerry York is a legendary hockey coach at Boston College, the alma mater of the Gaudreau brothers. He wants to erect a statue of Johnny on campus there.
Mm-hmm.
Thinks it would be a fitting tribute to a champion and a superstar at the school on and off the ice. You may have noticed if you were watching the standalone college football game last night, Florida State and Boston College, that the pregame interview, Bill O'Brien, the former head coach of the Houston Texans, formerly Tom Brady's quarterback's coach, goes through, gets asked about the upcoming game and says, first and foremost, I want to talk about the Gaudreau brothers and what they meant to Boston College. So very classy stuff there. And the football team went on and pulled a huge upset. So, and of course, at the Saddle Dome, if you haven't seen the scenes in Calgary there with all the mementos that people are leaving for one-time Flames superstar. David Alter proposing rename the Lady Byng Trophy the Johnny Gaudreau Trophy. That it would infuse that trophy with a little bit more emotion. Jay Fresh Hockey, controversial, but I would support retiring the Lady Byng after the 24-25 season, its 100-year anniversary, and replacing it with the Gaudreau Award voted by the NHLPA.
Mm-hmm.
The Byng is not valued by players, and it's a joke that it's voted by the media just looking at who doesn't take penalties, which is a fair shout. It's the first thing I voted again this year for the first time in many years. And it's the first thing I looked at is, okay, who's playing a lot, not taking a lot of penalties. And then I take that list and I cross-reference it. Has anybody here been suspended? Anything?
Arrested?
Fined, anything like that? And if not, then that's pretty much your list of candidates. Of course, it's been stigmatized now by hockey players, media, fans alike as an award you don't want to win, right? Like winners don't play the game clean, and in a sporting fashion, as backwards as that thinking is.
And Lady Byng was...
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing.
Do you remember who Lady Byng is?
No.
The wife of the Viscount Byng of Vimy, who commanded Canadian forces at the Battle of Vimy. And I believe she was also Governor General of Canada from 21 to 26.
Yeah.
He was. And they decided to donate it the next year.
I mean, not quite the story of the Grey Cup or the Stanley Cup there.
And nobody, I despite the fact I just did that, I don't think what I just did, people are commanded to do. And that is look up the history of, like, many people would say, oh, it keeps the history of the donation alive. I don't think people look up who Lady Byng is. I think most people just don't know who it is, and they are fine not knowing who that is. But Johnny Gaudreau, people will know for decades to come.
Mm-hmm. Well, which brings me to the discussion I was going to have. The Hart Trophy. You know who Hart is?
Nope.
Yeah. Dr. David Hart donated the trophy. His father, Cecil Hart, was a former coach and GM of the Montreal Canadiens. We know, of course, the Rocket Richard origin, but that, of course, is a newer,
it's a recent
trophy.
phenomenon. Yes.
If you don't know, James Norris, former owner of clubs, Detroit, Chicago, back in the day, the Art Ross Trophy. Blank. You know who Art Ross is?
No.
Okay. Arthur Howie Art Ross, former GM, head coach of the Boston Bruins, and Hockey Hall of Fame inductee as a player.
What year of the player?
A player who
played hockey,
retired in 1918.
Retired in 1918.
05 to 18. That was a damn good career.
That was the end of his run, 1918.
So all of this brings me to...
And they've already renamed the Lester Pearson into the Ted Lindsay, which is still a dated reference in and of itself, but at least we do know who Ted Lindsay was.
Right. And you know, Ted was so instrumental in the formation of a players' union that is why Terrible Ted
makes some sense.
Makes all the sense in the world for the NHLPA award.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. If we're going to rename the Lady Byng,
just do it
all. Rename them all?
Yeah, probably.
Should the Hart Trophy be the Gretzky Trophy?
Yep.
Should the Art Ross be the Lemieux Award?
Yeah.
Should the Norris be the Bobby Orr Trophy?
Do you flip-flop those, though, Lemieux and Gretzky? Because Gretzky's the guy who's got the unbreakable points record. If you're going to give it to...
I think the Hart is the highest award in the...
It is the highest award in the land.
Think, yeah. Which brings me to the Vezina Trophy. And honestly, like George Vezina might be the most well-known of all.
Yeah.
These... Do you name it after Jacques Plante because he introduced the goalie mask?
No.
Do you name it after Dominic Hasek so you can have a European player inclusion?
It's a little recent, but it's possible. You could.
Okay, well, where else are you going? Because I don't think you can name it the Roy or the Brodeur Award.
Dryden.
Short career.
Yeah.
I mean, splendid one in terms of team success.
Yeah.
Won a Calder and a Conn Smythe. The Conn Smythe before the Calder.
It's an NHL award, so you can't call it the Tretiak Award.
That's right. I think it's just Plante or Hasek, Blake. Unless you stick with Vezina on that one.
Brodeur.
You think you can get away with naming it the Brodeur Award? The first thing people are going to say is he was the third best goalie of his era after Roy and Hasek. No?
And why can't you do Quad just because we don't love Patrick? Is that why?
Well, because I think you got the same argument. A lot of people would say, yeah, he's the second best goalie of his era after Dominic Hasek.
Oh, I don't. Do you really think people would say that? That's not a very big club, I don't think.
Oh, I think the consensus opinion is that Hasek is the better goalie all time than Patrick Roy. I think by the analytics, I don't even think it's close, actually.
I know, but
I mean, Patrick in the big moments, obviously in Stanley Cup Finals games.
How much did they
for
overlap?
2 franchises?
But you say of his era. I mean, Patrick Roy's rookie years, 85, 86.
No, they didn't overlap that much.
And when you consider
Patrick, well, the other thing, Blake, is Patrick
part.
won it 3 times. Hasek won it 6 times.
I mean, that's the best argument.
Marty won it 4 times.
Yeah, call it the Hasek Award, sure. Also, you know, Patrick Roy could be involved in the league going forward, and that's just a little awkward.
Well, Dominic, who knows? Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, the other thing is, and we have talked long about NHL Awards night, so now you bring back the guys to award their trophy. So now you have Gretzky, Lemieux, Bobby Orr, Dominic Hasek presenting trophies at the award show. You like?
We know
the family of Johnny Gaudreau.
Hockey players don't like tall poppies. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of pushback on. I'm going to be presenting my award.
Well, certainly for the first year, I think you have to have it.
I mean, you love them involved, but I think they'll say no. That's too much ego, perhaps. But anyhow, I mean, in concept, I don't hate. I don't hate
that way they get a reunion every year at the awards show.
Yeah,
that way you get the best living hockey players together in one room. I mean, that still has some panache.
I think Gretzky would do it.
I think they'd all do it for the first year.
Yeah.
I mean, Bobby's getting up there. I don't know how well or unwell Bobby is physically, but like oftentimes that happens at the Hockey Hall of Fame. But if you don't have a personal connection to one of the inductees, you can understand why some of these greats of yesteryear go, maybe not this year.
Bobby's 76.
Bobby's 76. Yeah. Just looking that up.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
I think it's time to reconnect with the hockey fan.
Well, and also,
here's
here's the other thing, Blake. As we know, young people don't have a lot of regard, and in some cases now a disdain for history. Like if it didn't happen while they were on the planet, or it didn't happen while they were, of a certain age and capable of understanding, they don't want to know about it. So I think it'd be a way of educating younger hockey fans about some of the more recent greats. And like you said, like if we were sitting here and going, no, the Hart or Norris or Bing or Ross have so much sentimental value over such a wide swath of the hockey public, but I'm not sure you can make that argument with any of them.
No, I don't think so.
Like I've spoken in the past about, you don't name a stadium after someone and then go slap a corporate name on it. I mean, to me, that's tacky. That's crossing the line. But if you wanted to rename a stadium 100 years after naming it to someone when, all their living descendants have gone, hey, that I get.
Well, you bring up a great question, though. When they rename these awards, is it not going to be the Gretzky Award? Is it going to be the Pepsi Cola Award?
I think you would have to. I think your award show is brought to you by a presenting sponsor. I do not, or
combined name,
or the Wayne Gretzky Award presented by Pepsi or something like that.
The Pepsi Cola Gretzky
Award. No,
Awards.
I don't think you put it in the title of the award.
No.
I think they would stop short of that, because at that point, I think you cheapen those awards.
Well,
and I think after you rename them,
never stopped them before.
Well, yes, I mean, but I think after you rename them, you still want them imbued with some sort of weight amongst the hockey public. And I think if you add the corporate name in there, I'm not sure you're achieving that. BC Lions are huge winners at the inaugural Touchdown Pacific before 14,727 at Royal Athletic Park Saturday in Victoria. They snap a 5-game losing skid, and now 6-6, tied atop the West with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, trailing by virtue of the tiebreak. Nathan Rourke finally looks like the Nathan Rourke that we knew and loved 2 years ago. He completes 21 of 30 passes for 325 yards, 3 touchdowns, and just 1 interception. But I'll have you know, Farhan, all he cares about is 38-12. The Lions quarterback also makes headlines for a very quickie interview with TSN's Farhan Lalji at halftime. Frankly, it was so jarring that it kind of went viral and probably got the halftime interview and that game more attention than a typical halftime interview would go. If you missed it, Farhan had him, started talking about his numbers at the half. He replied that we're up 31-6, Farhan. That's all I care about, and then rushed off.
Yeah.
What'd you make of it?
And the backstory is Farhan felt no offense, by the way. They talked afterwards.
Thick skin, that one.
He apparently had a rule previously that I please don't ask me to do halftime interviews. I just find it awkward because that job's half done. So I don't want to have to comment on an incomplete day at work,
because the quarterback is usually principally involved in everything that you're going to talk about and want to achieve in the second half. When the offensive coordinator and the quarterback's coach and the offense meet. So I get that as well.
Yeah, he said, I'll always talk to you guys afterwards, but it puts me in an awkward position. I don't like it. So in this instance, Coach Rick Campbell said, listen, do this. I won't ever make you do one ever again. And so he said, really?
Special event, touchdown Pacific, the first one in his hometown. He was born in Victoria.
So he did it for his coach, he said, and it was brief. And he feels like now coach has got to honor his part of it. Farhan says that the two of them had a laugh about it afterwards, and he's been a great kid in every other way. So I'm not going to judge him on that. I'm not. I don't love it. I didn't like the look of it myself.
At least stay for a question. If he stays for a question, I think it's all. But again, he creates somewhat of a viral moment. Also read JC Abbott's column off the game from 3 Down Nation, and he goes into talking about how, and it seems even more acute now, just how uncomfortable Rourke is talking about himself.
Yes.
Yeah. That he is very much wants to be talking about the team. I get it. What I would say to Nathan is, son, part of the job of a quarterback is to do the most interviews. And within the body of those interviews, it is not only allowed, but preferred. Deflect praise, shoulder blame. It is very difficult. Some guys can't get there psychologically, emotionally, but that is part and parcel of the job in the modern era, the television era, of a quarterback.
And before people mix up two issues here, he has no issues public speaking at all. In fact, he goes on for quite a long time post game. But I would say he's got the deflect praise, shoulder blame part. In fact, almost to a fault. I would say sometimes, even in a narrow win, he will tell us for minutes on end at the end of a game how terrible he played. Yeah. Even though to our naked eye, he didn't play that bad. But he'll tell us how terrible he played. So he's got that part down. Mm-hmm. His whole thing is, I want to do it after the full
and that's fine.
Picture's been painted.
And that's fine. But the other thing that's important here is part of his massive salary, highest in the CFL, $200,000 of it is coming out of a marketing budget. So if Amar Doman is going to say, this is a player who represents Gate for us, which he did with us on Friday's program, that they sell more tickets when Nathan Rourke is under center, and that has unique or special marketing abilities for the British Columbia Alliance and the Canadian Football League, then the interviews have to, you're going to have to do a lot of interviews and a lot of appearances. That's also part of the job.
Generally, I can tell you, filling in for Farhan, we rarely ask for a quarterback. Like rarely.
At halftime.
Yes.
Yeah. Totally get it.
The importance of him being in the room for the full duration of halftime for coaching, as you've outlined, is respected by the television side. And I think the request was made again because the Victoria angle and all that sort of stuff. And the special circumstances. But for the most part, top receiver of the half, top running back of the half, returner that's made a long return. That's who gets the tap most often.
One of the things that BC Lions were trying to achieve this season was be a better line of scrimmage team and have a ground game. How about William Standback over the last 4 weeks, 4 games? 87, 199, and 93 yards on the ground. That part is really coming together. We had Jordan McSimic, their offense coordinator, on 6 weeks ago, something like that. He said, hey, that part's still a work in progress. Well, a lot of progress made there. Mathieu Betts making his return to the Lions in the Canadian Football League after failing in his bid to make the Detroit Lions, has one of the 4 sacks that the Lions are able to produce. Christian Covington with a terrific game, pride of Vancouver College on the defensive front. He got one of those sacks as well. And look, every time I listen to Julio, I've been listening to Moj and Julio on the pregame. Julio Caravata talks about the importance of first down and getting into those manageable second downs for the Lions, something that wasn't happening a lot during the 5-game losing streak. They convert 15 of 22 second down opportunities while holding Ottawa to just 5 of 21 second down conversions. Red Blacks shoot themselves big time as well with penalties, 12 for 144. If there is bad news for the Lions coming out of this game, it's that left tackle Jarrell Broxton was hurt early in the game and did not return. David Neville did a very nice job of filling in there, the Canadian backup. They have signed a offensive lineman to the practice squad this week. Farhan reporting that the Broxton injury isn't serious, but short week going to Montreal, doubtful he plays. He is their best offensive lineman. So we'll see how that goes. Lions also brought back defensive back Jalen Edwards-Cooper, who played a lot for them last year. As for reviews on the event, I'm going to read 2 here. BC Lions Den, and I know Brian has retired his podcast there at the BC Lions Den, but this is as made a fan in the CFL as you will find. He says, I've been to almost 20 Grey Cups, multiple BC Lions road games, but this weekend was probably a top 5 CFL experience for me. Thank you to Amar Doman, of course, from Victoria, the BC Lions, especially all the volunteers in Victoria that made it great. JC Abbott of 3 Down Nation, based here in Vancouver. What astounded me most while walking the concourse pregame was just how many were present from other fan bases. The Red Black were well represented, but they were still probably outnumbered by those in Rider jerseys, with a speckling of the other teams throughout the crowd. The only franchise he didn't see repped was the Montreal Alouettes. So effectively, it was a mini Grey Cup.
That's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
a lot of CFL. I think there were a lot of fans of different CFL stripes than Lions or Red Blacks on Vancouver Island or nearby who decided this is a spectacle, this is an event, I want to be there. And good on you.
You could make the argument that if you do, particularly on the Pacific side, you could do this for Atlantic as well, and that, you're generally going to be nearby some pretty touristy spots. Like Victoria is a top tourist destination in Canada. If you did it in Kelowna, there's a couple of other spots where I think you could make it work where, people are going to say, hey, we get to have a pretty decent vacation and see a fun CFL, adventure, then yeah, let's do it.
Yep. And we'll talk to Duane Vienneau, Lions president, coming up, which brings us to our menu. Greta, brought to you by Greta. Greta, great spot to catch the game throughout the season. Quick walk to the Rinker Stadium. Go-to spot for food, drink, fun before and after the game. Check out the arcade. Make it a game night at Greta, 50 West Cordova, or at gretabar.com. John Shannon's going to join us. Ex of the Bob McCown podcast. He's got personal news. Take us through that. We'll also talk plenty of hockey with John, including the Western Conference, the Vancouver Canucks crease, and other matters there. Gaudreau, Draisaitl, Duane Vienneau of the Lions. He'll cop to a couple of things that could be better, but needless to say, they are very much hoping to be able to do this again, Touchdown Pacific, next season. So I'll say this. Was jealous not to be there.
Yeah.
Was quite jealous not to be there. So
make it bigger.
Yeah. And, first game on Vancouver, CFL game on Vancouver Island ever. We know how many great fans the Lions in the league have over on Vancouver Island. Bet365 time, NFL season segment brought to you by Bet365, or bet of the day. NFL season starts Thursday in Kansas City, where the 2-time defending champions open against Baltimore, rematch of the AFC Championship game. KC already with injury problems at receiver and at running back. I think the game just means more to Baltimore and Lamar Jackson after they were absolutely putrid, laid that egg at home in the AFC title game. So I'm going Ravens on the money line at plus 125.
I didn't miss a Travis Kelce injury, did I?
No.
Because Mahomes was already talking about how Kyle Hamilton can't guard Travis Kelce. So I'm going with an early look. I think Mahomes is going to want to prove that point. So he's gonna
have Marquise Brown, their big wide receiver addition, Hollywood Brown. He's out of this game, and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back, is out of this game as well.
So I'm going with an early touchdown for Travis Kelce. A Travis Kelce first quarter touchdown gets me 260 plus 260 on Kelce.
Hamilton is young and improving.
A lot of people.
The same can't be said for Travis Kelce.
No, that's true.
Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS. John Shannon coming up next.
Normally when we talk about Greta Bar YVR, we're telling you make it a game night at Greta, and we're talking about hockey. Of course, we're not quite yet at hockey season, but game night can mean whatever it means, and that could mean soccer or football game to watch on the screen or your own games, because the arcade is half the fun at Greta Bar YVR. Make it your game night at 50 West Cordova. And of course, great food and drink specials, and you can also make it a late game night as they're open late every single night. So make it a late game night, your game night at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova.
Sekeres Price from the historic Wall Center, and this next interview brought to you by Mr. Lube. Mr. Lube and Tires, change your oil, change your wipers event is on now. Visit MrLube.com to download your coupon for a free pair of Goodyear hybrid wiper blades with any oil change, only for a limited time at Mr. Lube with 18 locations in the Lower Mainland. Funny enough, I went to Mr. Lube, changed my oil and my wipers just a few weeks ago.
Missed the event.
I think it's retroactive. I can get the good. Yeah. Anyways, next time. Here he is, the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, and now the former co-host of the Bob McCowan podcast, because John Shannon announced on social this week that he will no longer be participating. And, well, nice to see you, Mr. Shannon. Fine work with Bob for the last few years.
Yeah, it's been a thrill. And really, and as both of you guys know, it goes well beyond the 4.5 years we did this way, which was COVID, which started during COVID. But I joined Sportsnet in 2009 and was contractually obligated to Bob's show for a long period of time before we left in 2019. So it's bittersweet, but guys, it was time. It really was time. We need to do some new things. I still do a lot of media across the country, which I love, in Winnipeg and in Edmonton and obviously in Vancouver. And there'll be other stuff. There'll be other stuff coming, and I'm going to enjoy September for now.
Yeah, well, good on you, and again, well done on a run there with Bob.
You could join us at Young Stars this year if your schedule's opened up so much. You could come back to
beautiful Penticton,
your hometown,
right near Oliver.
Yeah,
the most famous man from Oliver.
I might be somewhere else enjoying my time.
Good on you. Good on you. Summer's not done for John Shannon. You mentioned you do a lot of work in Edmonton and in Winnipeg. We're asking today on our poll question, John, does the West run through Edmonton? Are the Oilers the team to beat in the West?
Well, that's, we're looking for a black and white answer for an answer that's very gray, because I think there are people in Colorado that could argue that, particularly if they're healthy this year and they solve a bit of their goaltending issues. Dallas could argue that. And, I'm not being a homer, but I think Vancouver could argue a little bit of that too. So it's not as simple as saying, okay, Leon signed, big money, Connor's going to be happy, life goes on at Edmonton, and they're going to go to the Stanley Cup final. The West is too tough to pick one team over any other.
Hey, every golfer that tees it up can beat Scotty Scheffler, but Scotty Scheffler's still the golfer to beat in a PGA Tour event. I mean, it's not guaranteeing, But now that they've got that solidified, do they get to now more clearly, more accurately get to make their hockey moves to get their stuff in line? Like, if that's hanging over their head, maybe they're more restricted, and maybe they've got to, keep an ambiguous amount of cap space free in contracts going forward. Does this open up something though for the Oilers? Does it make them better?
Well, I don't know how it could make them better. It's just signing one of their regular guys. But
that's the other argument.
But what I would argue is it will make them different. We have not seen truly the Stan Bowman effect in Edmonton. And I think that it's going to take us a while to understand that what really influence Stan will have on the construction of that hockey club. I think it's fair to say, rightly or wrongly, and it's very subjective, that he probably has a different philosophy than Kenny Holland had. So that means what? And I don't think any of us understand that yet. We do know that they're going to have a bit of money available. Evander Kane's going on IR. Who knows for how long? Maybe it's the Mark Stone treatment. You never know. And then the signings that occurred on free agency were before Stan was there, with Jeff Jackson running things. Will Jeff Skinner come out of the woodwork and have a good season, even though he's never been to the Stanley Cup playoffs in his career? So there are a few questions to be answered in Edmonton, and a lot of it to me surrounds Stan Bowman's influence on how the team is built.
Well, I'll say this, even if Arvidsson and Skinner pan out for the Oilers, and I think there's a lot of reason to believe that they will, I still think you have a defense problem. Like, I think you're weaker on defense than you were last year. You're looking at Emberson and Brown as your third pair with Nurse and the struggles that he's had. So you better get goaltending, and better goaltending than you did at the beginning of last season if you're Edmonton and thinking of winning the division. That all said, I mean, they may just be all eggs in the playoff basket. And frankly, John, although I hate to say it, I expect Vegas to bounce back here this year.
So do I.
They sort of fiddled around last year. I would expect a more holistic 1 through 82 effort from
if they're healthy.
Knights.
Sure, yeah.
The interesting thing about Edmonton is that I don't know if you recall, a year ago, Leon and Connor and all those guys were already in Edmonton, and they were already practicing, and they're having one of those captains practices or whatever they're called. Well, none of them are showing up for a while yet. It didn't really help their start last year. And anything can improve if they get off to a better start. But we also know that really it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And the Oilers finished well for the most part. So from that perspective, adding Vegas, I think there are 6 teams, to be honest. I think there are 6 teams in the West that could lay claim to being in the Western Conference final. And last I checked, you can only have 2.
Yeah. So that's Edmonton, Vegas, Vancouver, Colorado, Dallas. Are you a Nashville guy here, John? Is that what I'm
hearing? I think Nashville's on the cusp, and I would not rule out the Los Angeles Kings, boys. I would not rule out the LA Kings still. They're going to be a better hockey club. The Jim Hiller's going to have a little more influence. They got rid of the Pierre-Luc Dubois contract, which was a huge bust. And Rob Blake's under a ton of pressure for that team to perform. So now you with mentioning LA and Nashville, now we're up to 7.
Yeah.
And we haven't mentioned St. Louis. And we know that Torrey Krug's now on LTIR for the year. That gives Doug Armstrong a lot more cap space to play. And knowing Doug as I do, he's pouring through everybody's contract saying, is there another offer sheet that I can make?
Oh
wow.
I'm not,
still some RFAs out there.
That is me being totally, sarcastic about Doug. I love Doug, but, Doug is trying to rebuild the St. Louis Blues, and he's doing it the best way he can, and he will do it every way he can.
Well, he's got trade space.
I was going to say, Mike, clip it, Shannon, : Blues will attempt another offer.
Yes. We were talking about the salary cap going up earlier, and where do you think this Leon contract puts Connor McDavid? Right? What are we talking about? After watching NBA salaries reach these, and they're not going to be approaching NBA salaries, but I'm saying we have to come to terms with the fact that they are going to make a jump. Maybe not to the level of a left-handed pitcher or a 3-point shooter like Steph Curry, But like, what is Connor McDavid going to make, given we're expecting another jump of maybe $4 to $5 million for the following season?
Well, you're right, Blake. And so by the time Connor's new contract kicks in, there'll probably be $10 million more in the pie for a team.
Right. So we're talking percentage of salary cap for a team. Boy, that number gets big now, doesn't it?
It does. But at the same time, you know, when you like, I think Connor's going to be 15 or north. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think you have to have the conversation with Connor, and hopefully they had the same one with Leon, saying, guys, if we give you all the money, we got no money to put the rest of the team on, and you're only playing 23 minutes. Mm-hmm. So who are we going to put out there for 37 minutes? Who are we going to put out there if we expect to win? And that's the real challenge of, and you're right. I mean, the NFL cap just keeps going up exponentially. The NBA cap is going to explode next year. The NHL cap is going to go up gradually. I don't see an explosion of $15 million in the next 2 years. You just don't. It's going to increase. But remember, before the pandemic, guys, we talked about at this point in 2024, 2025, we were going to have a $100 million cap. We were going to have that, which is why guys got signed to big deals prior to the pandemic. That's why the Leafs did what they did, because they assumed the cap would continue to grow, and it didn't for a long time. It flattened. So that becomes the real challenge. And the revenues are going to improve in the NHL, but they're not going to improve that you're going to see a giant jump. So you have to find a way to pay the rest of the players on your team. And don't forget, Evan Bouchard needs a new contract soon. Evan Bouchard, you know, they weren't going to pay Evan Bouchard what they said they weren't going to pay to Broberg. So there's a lot of challenges, and it's not just the Oilers having the challenge. Every team that pays to the cap has that challenge, and that's not going to go away for a long, long time.
But not every team has two of the top 5 players in the world on their team.
No,
that's the challenge for them.
Okay, so the last time one team did have 2 of the top 5 players in the National Hockey League, it was Chicago.
Chicago or Penguins?
I would say pick either one.
Yeah. Either scenario.
But I also know who the general manager of the Chicago Blackhawks was.
Right, that's true. He knows how to stick handle that.
And no one knows how to manage this, in my opinion, better than Stan Bowman. You know, you look at track records for the last 15 years. If you said, I want a guy that can manage stars, keep the core, and work everything around it, who are you going to hire? Well, hey, Stan Bowman's as good as any of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you make a good point, John, in that, you know, Edmonton, even after the Draisaitl contract, needs to do something with Bouchard. Now, granted, he's an RFA. Blake makes a good point about it being 2 years down the road for Connor McDavid. Plus, they got a lot of guys on expiring deals. Vegas has got to re-sign Theodore, who's UFA after this year. So, you know, it may well be, when just looking at core, not to mention their goaltender to Vegas, when just looking at cores, the Canucks can feel pretty good that they got their core for at least the next 2 years with Demko, Hughes, Pettersson, Miller, which brings me to goaltending, John, and Canucks goaltending. Much has happened since we last talked to you. How worried, how concerned would you be if you were with the Canucks or a Canucks fan about what you're hearing on Thatcher Demko and Arturs Shelovs?
Well, with respect to Shelovs, I'm not worried. You know, I mean, he's not going to be the second coming of Carey Price. He's not. He's in the system there. He's the backup goalie. I think we can find backup goalies. So is he good? Yeah, he's good. Is he a folk hero in Vancouver right now? Yeah, he is. That's part of his magic. I think that the key question in the Demko one isn't about coaching as much as it is, are we going to go through this every year, once in a while, with Thatcher Demko's health? Is he going to be, fragile every year? Not because he wants to be, but because he throws his body into the play and into the position so much that he hurts himself. That would be, to me, be the biggest concern, that I think that's having huge conversations in the office. What have we got with Demko, and how do we keep him healthy?
Do you think their season hinges on Demko?
Yes, I think it does. He's a top flight goaltender, and he has to play, in my mind, for this team to be successful, 55 regular season games and every playoff game. Every playoff game. So, we talk about the regular season being 82 exhibition games. He has to be there so they can get into the playoffs, and then he has to be there to be a difference maker in the playoffs. Well, let me ask you two guys. Demko is healthy for the whole playoffs. Are we talking about the Edmonton Oilers being in the Stanley Cup final?
I don't
This
think,
past playoffs or the
this past
next
playoffs.
spring?
This past playoffs. I don't think
the past playoffs.
I think he makes a big enough difference in that Oilers series.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, there were some goals from distance on Shelovs that I think that Thatcher Demko stops. Now, Shelovs also made some other incredible saves. Put it this way, I still think Dallas is a major hurdle for the Canucks if they happen to get through Edmonton.
His point was about Edmonton, though. Do they get
Yeah,
past Edmonton?
Yeah,
You get through Edmonton, you can beat Dallas.
Potentially.
Sure.
But he buys him another round at the very least. I think he probably does.
Another round at about $5 to $6 million at home game. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it was a fun ride in 2 rounds.
What
I know, and you know what? It is just, not to change the topic completely, but isn't it just thrilling to be talking about Canadian teams succeeding in the Stanley Cup playoffs and how much fun it brought all of us? How much fun it was. God, we need more.
No, I know. And with respect to our friends in the United States, it just means more here. It's just cultural.
Sure.
It is, a rhythm of life that either, cheers up the days or
way more vibes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Way more.
What do you make of what's going on here with Ian Clark and the goaltending coaching change?
Well, from a distance, and I must admit it, from a distance, I read everything and hear everything and talk to a few people. Perhaps Ian overplayed his hand. I think Ian thought he was that important to the organization. He has a great relationship with Demko. We know that. And we see other organizations change their goaltending system of who runs things. Benoit Allaire in New York, Mitch Kornback in Nashville. There seems to be now a hierarchy in the goaltending departments around the NHL, and I assume Ian thought that he could create that in Vancouver, and it certainly sounds like there was pushback. And whether it was Rutherford or Alvin, they said, "Well, no, we don't want to do that. If you're going to do that, you're still under contract, and then we're going to make you a scout. But if you're not going to go on the ice, and we totally respect why you don't want to go on the ice because of your knees." I would say that there's just been a difference in opinion on how to manage the goaltending department.
Do you think he's wearing the injuries? Do you think he's wearing the goaltender injuries that have cropped up?
I don't know how you can. I don't know how you can. I mean, that's...
It would be theoretical at most, right? You can't prove it. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, if it was an owner running down the hallway and yelling at him because the goalie was injured, that's one thing, because owners don't know as much as other people. But it's not. Rutherford understands that. He played the position. Alvin understands that. Right. I mean, those guys understand all that.
Although Jim never played a reverse VH, so he doesn't know the pain of that.
Well, I'm not. I'm old enough to remember when I was in the arena when Jimmy played. Yeah. So I'm not sure he ever went down on his knees.
Yes, right.
Hey, whether it was Shelovs in a really tough spot this past spring, whether it was the development of Thatcher Demko, Jacob Markstrom before him. I mean, Ian's got quite a track record in Vancouver, and that's not even touching all the stuff he did in Columbus, which needless to say was outstanding work. Is this wise on the Canucks part? If in fact Clark overplayed his hand and they said, no, if that's the case, you're just going to be a scout. Is this a wise move from the Canucks?
I think it's too early to answer that. You know, I mean, you know what? Just because one announcement was made one day doesn't mean things can't change another. So I think, Matt, I'm not dodging the question. I just think it's too early to say, okay, it's cut and dry. This is the way it is. Ian Clark's still part of the organization. He still has valuable information, and he still can be a resource. So it's not as if he's been sent to Robidas Island. You know, he's still there, and he's still a resource.
Moving on here, John, your thoughts and memories of Johnny Gaudreau, and what have you made of the outpouring for him and his brother Matthew since the terrible events of last week?
Oh, well, this isn't a hockey story. They just happen to play hockey. This is a tragic family story. You know, the outpouring of what the Gaudreau family are like, what Johnny and Matthew were both like as people, the timing of it, being groomsmen in their sister's wedding the following day, supposedly, Matthew's wife being pregnant. I don't think you can write any more tragic storylines if you are writing a movie. This is
the details make it worse and worse, don't they? Like,
every day, you know. And here's we I think we all learned how much people loved Johnny Gaudreau. I think we did. I mean, look at the outpouring in Calgary where he left, but the fan base has rallied to show support. To change the topic a little bit, here, you know, we have to find a way to fix drunk driving. We have to find a way to get this out of our society. You know, the sad thing is that, yes, 2 hockey players, one prolific, were killed by a drunk driver, allegedly, on Thursday night. I can tell you right now, you know as well as I do, that wasn't the first drunk driver killed this weekend, on Labor Day weekend. You know that. You know there were more. How do we fix that? How do we stop people from getting in cars after drinking? How stupid do we have to be to get in a car after you drink? How stupid. And by the way, guys, mea culpa. We've all done it. We've all had a glass of wine or a beer and say, well, I've only had a glass of wine. I forgot the beer, and get in my car and drive home. Well, I won't. I tell you right now, I will not do it again. I will not do it again. And I hope that there's enough people out there that will say, we have to fix this. You know, it's sorry to get on a soapbox, but it's like gun control.
Yeah.
You know, we react to situations of shootings. Well, we better react to this one, because this one's fixable. This isn't in the United States Constitution. Yeah. This one is just plain stupid.
If I'm not mistaken, there are, after someone has been convicted of drunk driving, as they go through the process of getting their license back, my understanding is there is like a breathalyzer that you can install on the car to make sure that the car doesn't engage unless someone is below the legal limit. David Alter has proposed renaming the Lady Byng after Johnny Gaudreau. It was the only major NHL award that he won, and this year's actually the 100-year anniversary of the trophy. And let's face it, John, the award has a bit of an image problem, that maybe if you renamed it the Johnny Gaudreau, it would be more desirable and be less draw less derision from hockey fans and media.
Well,
and players.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, you know, if they're if they're going to rename one trophy, they better rename them all. You know, that to me is a discussion for another time. Yeah. You know, the one thing is that we always worry that, you know, the hockey world is so insular and small. You can tell by coverage this weekend that Johnny Gaudreau made a huge impact on a lot of people.
Yeah.
In a lot of cities, you know, whether it was in Jersey, whether it was in Boston, where he went to school, obviously Calgary and now Columbus. So from that perspective, you know, the sadness does not compensate for it, but hopefully the family can take solace in that they raised two young, tremendously professional gentlemen.
Mm-hmm. Who were adored widely, as we learned.
Mm-hmm.
John, thank you very much for this. Once again, well done with Bob for all those years, and we will catch up here soon.
Cheers, boys.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the net. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
Price from the historic Wall Center. It's our pleasure to welcome back to the program. He was here just in advance of the season, and now that the Lions have executed yet another big event around a regular season game, our time to welcome back Duane Vienneau, president of the Lions.
Spike that football, Duane.
Program. Yeah.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Show us your best touchdown dance.
I don't have the energy.
Yeah. Well, let's start there because, just talking to some of your people, boy, that was a big effort, and this has been a season of big efforts for you guys in the front office, given everything that happened with the opener and now this game.
Yeah, I cannot overemphasize how proud I am of our business staff. It was a tremendous undertaking, and just in the middle of the 70th season and the home opener and Grey Cup and just everything that we're working on, to go and essentially take the show on the road, if you will, and build out a mini Grey Cup in Victoria in a stadium that holds 3,000 people, and then doing the festival site at Ship Point and all the other things that we did around it was just a tremendous undertaking, and most of our staff are trying to get some time off this week.
Yeah, I mean, usually Grey Cup is ask enough, and you still got that coming.
Do you think it helped that it was a must-win game? I mean, we were asked that question going into the weekend. Like normally we talk about these games purely as the festival part, the enjoyment of the game. We sort of as a side note, and they actually have to win this game, not mathematically, but for the sake of momentum and saving the season, they kind of needed to win that. Do you think that helped just everything come together?
Yeah, I think so. It was an interesting, were you guys at the game?
No, couldn't make it, no.
So for example, our team, the BC Lions, their dressing room was about 3 Atco trailers.
Yes.
And the showers were an Atco shower system and bathrooms, and it was almost like a concert festival setup. If you can imagine an empty parking lot, and you build the trailers into this little compound, and then you would have saw Rick's post-game speech with the team, and it's in the middle of a parking lot. Well, that's how it was. So it was like as grassroots as you can get, playing a football game on a stadium that isn't a football stadium, and this high importance game in the standings, and just everything about it made it that much more special, I think. And to come out with the win is a good reward for the overall efforts from the entire organization, both business and football.
Does the event work if you don't win the game, Duane?
I think the event works if you don't win the game, but I'll tell you, it's way better winning. I know that's not the most intelligent thing in the world to say, but yeah, winning's always better. But because in the past Touchdown Atlantic games, because there was no home team, so to speak, in the region, it was a little bit more neutral site, and there was representation from all teams. Now there was representation from all teams in Victoria this last weekend, but there was a high population of Orange. So that made it, I think, that much more exciting for the home team, and to be able to pull off a win in that environment was crazy. Like, we had a 14-7, I think, is our attendance, and in most stadiums across the CFL, that would have been, the roars wouldn't be as loud, so to speak. It was loud. And it was just a very energetic, and the crowd was great, and it was a hot day. So it just, all in all, it worked out to be well. There's a bunch of, can you always do things better? There's lots of things we could do better. I gave an analogy to somebody, when a brand new restaurant opens up, they usually take 2 weeks of doing dry runs, and we literally opened up a brand new restaurant with no dry run and went, and so there was some glitches along the way, and I wish we, you sometimes you wish you could have a preseason game before that, but you just can't. But next time, if we ever do it next time, we'll work through some of those.
So what's on that list, Duane? What could you do better? What's on the list to improve?
Our food and beverage on one side of the stadium needed to be a bit better, Matt. There was long lineups and it was a hot day, so the combination of the heat and not being able to get liquid as quick as you possibly can, isn't the best scenario. So that's something that I wish we could have done better, but we will get better at it for the future. And other than that, there's just sometimes you say, it's going to work here, you're set up, but maybe you should do it a little bit differently. There's some tweaks differently.
So let's ask you this straight away. Is there a future here? And if there is, could you go bigger? Could you go bigger than 14-7? Is there a way to fashion a bigger stadium than that?
I don't know yet. And I honestly don't know the answer to that question. Do we want to try to do this again? Absolutely. The success of, overall success was great. I haven't watched it on TV yet, but I heard it looked great on television. The vibes in the room were in the stadium were great. We obviously got the win. But we had a party zone, we had a VIP zone. We want to try to get more seats built out, and sometimes you have to look at how do you get more seats built out in the actual physical space you have, and what is that number. So there's a lot of work to do, a lot of analyzing to do to figure it out. But do we want to do it again? Absolutely. But we want to make sure when we do it, we do it right. And if there was any kind of any improvements needed, we got to get those fixed.
So Amar told us last week that he wants to do it again. I saw the commissioner lauding everything about the event post-game on the field. Who are we waiting on to say yes on this?
There was a partnership between the province was very supportive of us, the province of British Columbia, the city, ourselves. So we all want to do it again. There's no question about that, Matt. It's about making sure that we can do it again the right way, and making sure that we can build it, learn from this one. How do we make it better? And just those really are, that's the analysis right now. Is do we have to change it? Do we put some bleachers in the end zone versus putting a party zone? And that brings down your attendance, but does it make it a better experience for everybody there? And it's those kinds of things that we have to figure out.
Could you build out around Starlight? Could you put more people in Starlight in Langford, or is Royal Athletic Park absolutely going to be the venue if it happens again?
Starlight, the challenge with Starlight, and I'm not saying no to Starlight, so don't take it as that, please, but the challenge with Starlight is to build that big bleacher section. There's not enough space there without shutting down the road. And that road is a major thoroughfare.
Yeah, it's pretty tight there, isn't it? Yeah,
it's pretty tight in there. So that is what I believe to be the major challenge.
Can you get a CFL field onto Starlight? It's a small imprint too. Can you? I don't even know if
that's no. Our field size would fit there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so some of the things with Starlight is they have the amenities that for a professional football game, which Royal Athletic Park we had to sort of build out, but Royal Athletic Park has more space to be able to build the event around it. So it's there's a lot of analysis needs to be done, and but no questions asked, we want to do this again. The vibe walking around downtown and Ship Point, and on the Wednesday and the Thursday and the Friday and even Saturday morning leading into the game, it felt like a Grey Cup. And it really felt like it. And you saw jerseys everywhere. I saw jerseys, like I said, from every team represented, even the Schooners jersey, the ones that they have that says never, only unbeaten team or whatever that is. And so they're lots of fun. But It was just great. We had on Thursday and Friday night, and Saturday night, we had a sort of a post headquarter bar each night, and you walk into there on a Thursday night, and it honestly felt like I was at a Grey Cup festival where everyone was in a team room having a great time. And so the huge success. The community rallied around us. The entire country rallied. Everybody wants to do it again, and we just want to analyze it a little bit, figure it out, make sure all of our partners are in line, and let's see where that takes us.
Yeah, West Shore Rebels of the Canadian Junior League play at Starlight, so they fit a field there.
Absolutely.
Last question here, Duane. I do want to give you a moment on this topic because you guys now have become the first group to deliver a CFL regular season game to Vancouver Island. And God knows we've heard from those football fans on the island over the years about getting to and from Lions games. You've helped them out with the 4 p.m. starts. Now you've delivered a game right there. A word or two about your fan base on the island and what this meant for them.
Yeah, it was tremendous. And you just said it all. We every single game, the ferries are jam-packed with Lions fans coming from the island to Vancouver and then back. And so this was just an opportunity to bring it home, so to speak. And having Nathan Rourke coming home, was an extra added touch. I was actually even joking. I told Betts, I said, I've told everybody you were born in Victoria. And he was sort of laughing about that. But, it was just great to do it. We have such a great fan base on the island, and it was nice to do it. And then Amar, obviously our owner, Amar Doman, he's born and raised in Victoria, and it was a special time for him as well. And he was kidding the day before. He said he went home and visited his mom, and he fell asleep on the couch, and he just sort of said, like, it you do when you go home. So Victoria is home for him, and it was very special for a bunch of people everywhere.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, Wayne. It seemed every bit the event it was billed to be. So
it was tremendous, a tremendous event. We want to figure out how to make it bigger and better next time we do this. I almost said next year. You almost got me on that one. And just how do we get this thing to grow and grow and grow?
When would be the decision on that, Duane? Is that something?
Is it a possibility?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The decision process has to start soon, because we have to be able to say, are we going to do something like this and try to get it into the schedule? And if we're getting it into the schedule, then you have to be able to fulfill that schedule requirement. So there's no rest here. It's, if we're going to do it, we have to figure it out sort of quickly if we're going to do it, and see what happens.
Well, by Grey Cup, like, would we know by the end of the CFL season whether it's happening again next year, or do you have
so the process is the schedule is usually announced just right after Grey Cup.
And real quick, did you get any feedback from the visitors?
They thought it was a great event. Our coaches, the hardest part sometimes on these things is making sure, because I used to look after this project when I worked for the CFL. And so when we would do Touchdown Atlantics, we would always try to make sure that each team had equal dressing rooms. Each team had, we didn't want any team to get any kind of preference over the other. Yeah. And it was always intended to try to make sure that was the case. So in this environment, it was a little different, because when you're the home team, we actually gave all the preference to Ottawa. So, our coach, Rick Campbell, and the whole football ops team, I give them tons of credit, but they realized that we couldn't take the better side. We couldn't take the better dressing rooms. We couldn't take the better anything. We had to be the good hosts and give Ottawa, the existing dressing rooms. They were in the shady side, those kinds of things, because that wouldn't be a good look. So I think Ottawa, I think they were probably happy with everything, but we did some fun things with them together. Like, I don't know if you saw it on social, but we had a couple of our players, Terry Williams and and I believe it was Hollins and Terry, and then Dom Rhymes, and I forget who the other player was from Ottawa. They went to the Empress and did high tea together, like side by side, and then we had a reception on Friday night, and Dice and Berkey and Neil and Rick were all in the same room at this VIP reception. So we really tried to incorporate both teams. When we first talked to Ottawa and Adrian Sierra, the president there, about coming and being a part of Touchdown Pacific, we said, we want you to come in early, not just the night before. We want you to be visible in the community and all of those things. And they really did that. And it makes for the excitement. When you're seeing two football teams walking around downtown Victoria,
That's
all
different.
at the same
That's
time.
different.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't blend. Like they're big. It was just a good atmosphere.
Yeah, they don't blend with the retired couple from suburban
The offensive
Portland.
linemen.
That's usually in Victoria at this time of year. Brilliant stuff, Duane. Congrats again. Thanks for the time, sir, and best of luck Friday in Montreal.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye, guys.